Hulk Hogan. Hollywood Hulk Hogan. Terry Bollea. I did a video earlier, a couple of months ago, where I said that Ric Flair was the greatest wrestler of my generation. And I am not changing my opinion. Okay? And I clearly stated that in my presentation, why I felt so, and I don't want to repeat that here. But a fantastic argument can be made for Mr. Hogan being the greatest wrestler of my generation. And part of the reason that I do these videos is because I sacked Mr. Hogan's groceries in 1979 when he was still a jobber, if you will. He was an advanced jobber, but I sacked his groceries the day he had the job to Ron Banks. He had to take a job and do a job for Ron Banks, who was another wrestler that weighed about 290. He had the job, and I was asking him about what happened, and he was polite enough to tell me what happened, even though he could have smashed me with his fingers, you know. The reason and that was part of the reason I do that, because I was in a hotbed of wrestling in Memphis, Tennessee, in the late 70s and the early 80s. That was probably one of the greatest territories ever. I am not berating the Carolinas. I'm not berating the Washington area, the Seattle, San Francisco, where the Samoans came from, or any of that. I'm not berating any of that. I'm just saying my experience was Southern style wrestling, put on by Jackie Fargo, Billy Superstar Dundee, and Jerry the King Lawler. Three of the best there was, and that was where I first experienced the great Freebirds. And that'll be another video. But now that is where I met Mr. Hogan. And Mr. Hogan, I have met Hulk Hogan personally. I don't remember if I shook his hand. And I met George Foreman in 1981. And George Foreman, to me, was a more imposing athlete to me than Hulk. He just seemed more impressive to me as a physical specimen. Mr. Foreman had an aura about him. And I'm not, now maybe because, that was in the early 80s. That was before Mr. Hogan had found his way and found his personality and developed himself. But he was an impressive figure. He had the most powerful looking chest. His chest just looked like a barrel, and he had no fat on him. He was very impressive as a man. Very impressive. And he was a nice man. He was polite to me and nice, even though I was just some 19-year-old kid. Okay, so let's go on. I've talked about my experience, why I like to do wrestling videos. And it really kind of pisses me off that I don't get more viewers on these videos than I do, because they're good. They're good. Now, here's what I'm going to say. The only reason that I would not put Mr. Hogan as the greatest wrestler in the time, because he is the greatest drawer. He sold the most tickets. All right? He sold the most tickets. Easily sold the most tickets. Okay? And the other thing about Mr. Hogan is his personality and his psychology is so great that he could be one of the greatest heels, the Hollywood Hulk Hogan. He was one of the greatest heels of all time, and he was definitely the greatest babyface of all time. Okay? But to a certain extent, he had to totally reinvent himself and kind of be an actor to be Hollywood Hulk Hogan. Where Mr. Flair didn't need any kind of anything to become a heel. Mr. Flair could be either way. He didn't need any accoutrements. He didn't need any booker. He didn't need anybody. He didn't really need that. Mr. Flair, to me, the wrestler is an actor. And to me, an actor is a spiritual activity. An actor takes on a whole nother personality. An actor gets in touch with a universal mindset, and he becomes that person. So for a wrestler, that's part of your judgment of a wrestler, is how well his personality can change. And Mr. Hogan became a babyface, and he did that well. Maybe he's the best. But my criticism of him is as a worker. As a worker. Because I don't remember seeing him doing too many matches over 15, 20 minutes. Okay, I don't remember him doing the hour matches. Which I don't even know if they're doing the hour matches. But, you know, I don't recall. If my facts are wrong, go ahead and tell me. And I also think that, you know, the way he finished his matches, because it's just hilarious that my little son Nick, he was about 13 years old, and we would mimic this thing that Hogan would do when the bad guy was hitting on him, and all of a sudden he would start taking the hits and he'd start shaking his body a certain way and contorting, and you knew that he was going to do the foot drop. You knew he was going to do the foot thing where he caught him with the foot thing and do the leg drop on him, and you just knew it was coming. But, you know, I think Mr. Hogan, the reason he's not a great worker is because his personality was so great and his aura was so great and he had something going that was so strong, he didn't have to work. I definitely think that Mr. Bolay, and I'm calling him his name out of respect for him because I have immense respect for him, was so talented, he didn't have to be a worker. And he shares a common trait with someone like Jake the Snake Roberts, who was such a good salesman and such a good personality and used such good ring psychology that he didn't have to work that hard. So, I've been going on like 7 minutes here, so let me just close out to see what I said and tell you what I just said. Number one, I would say that Mr. Hogan was physically and aura-wise, personality, the greatest wrestler of all time. Physically, personality, aura, fantastic. His psychology, I don't think that he's up with Mr. Flair. Mr. Flair was able to do what he did without anybody helping him. He did that. Because I think that he was in the WCW and the NWA. I don't think that he had the kind of help that Hogan did with Mr. McMahon. You know, and I think Hogan got a lot of help with this whole thing that he invented, this personality. Even the Minnesota situation, he did well. And I think that he would have been, if he was in a different era, he would have been a great worker. He just didn't have to be. And if I'm wrong on my facts, please, I beg your apologies. You know, because I think Mr. Bolay was a nice man to me 30 years ago, and he comes across as a nice man. And I really hope he gets through his divorces and he gets through his marriages, because I wish him the best, because I think he's a great man. I do. I think he's a great man. And me as an outside observer, you know, I just have respect for him. I do. And personally, if you don't listen to this, or you don't think that I have the standing to make these statements, then that's fine. You can kiss my ass. Because there's no doubt in my mind that if somebody would have seen me when I was 19, that I could have been a great wrestler. I just don't have any fucking doubt about it. Really. As well as I can talk, as well as I can, you know, that I'm the right size. But it didn't happen. So it's all good. I'm just going to talk about it. And that's the way it's going to be. Peace out.